Well, again, I'm Doug Smith, and welcome to the 6th April 2018 edition of Portsmouth This Week. Our special guest today is Rhode Island Secretary of State, Nellie Gorbea. Welcome back to the show. It's always good to have you on the program.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here.
You are the third-ranking official in the state of Rhode Island, so I didn't realize what a big poobah you were, but that's great. I know you've got many different duties as the Secretary of State, things relating to government transparency, for example, business registration and lobbying, and also preserving our historic resources. You're also, though, our Chief Elections Officer. And so you're responsible, essentially, for the integrity of our elections. Let me ask you this. How do you relate to the Board of Electors, or Board of Elections, I guess? Yeah,
no, that's a great question. But let me start by saying that I work for you and for all Rhode Islanders. So I may be number 3 in the license plate of the executive branch, but really I see my job as working for you. So you don't have to be impressed or anything.
Okay, well, I'm impressed.
So Rhode Island and every state is different, and that's why your question is such a great one. So in Rhode Island, we have an election system that really has 3 entities that work together very closely. At the local level, you have a local board of canvassers. And then at the state level, you have the State Board of Elections and the Secretary of State. The Secretary of State handles the central voter registration system and then also prepares the layout of all ballots in all 39 cities and towns. Once those ballots are designed and prepared and sent to the printer, the Board of Elections, the State Board of Elections, which is an independent agency that is appointed by the governor, then the confirmations are made by the Senate. That nonpartisan agency then handles the actual day of elections in coordination with the local Board of Canvassers. And they also handle campaign finance issues, any kind of dispute resolution. If there's a question about the conduction of a particular election, those are handled by the board. So we have a very good relationship, actually. We just have slightly different duties.
Okay, now, how many people are on the board?
Yeah, so there are commissioners that are appointed by the board. There's, I believe there's 7 of them.
Okay.
And so they're staggered terms because they've been appointed at different times. And they're they have a long time service. So I believe their terms are around 7 years long or 9 years long, something like that. They're paid somewhat, but not hugely so.
Like everybody else in the state.
Yeah, no, it's not. These are really hardworking people. In an election cycle, there's a lot of hours that you have to put in to verify that the election is being handled appropriately.
Yeah, I think one of our own Portsmouth people, Bill West, is.
Oh, yes.
I believe he's on the
Chairman
board.
West, yes, I remember him. Yes.
And great guy.
Yep.
How are they selected, and how do people know? Like, if somebody's interested, for example, in maybe being one of those.
So the appointments are made by the governor. So she's the one who has actual responsibility for this. I would encourage anyone who's interested to write to the governor's office with their resume and say that they're interested in being a member of the Board of Elections. And also, the other thing that they can do is, I know that local boards are always looking for volunteers, and so to become a part of an election cycle, either by being a poll worker on election day or serving on a local board of canvassers, is great experience for then also preparing yourself for something like the State Board of Elections.
Yeah.
So if you've got the bug and for whatever reason there's not an opening right now, there's a lot of different ways in which to activate that interest.
Probably a good way to start, too, would be, as you say, going to those polling places. I would assume that our folks in the town hall would be the place to kind of go to
Yes.
talk to about this stuff. We have Jackie Schultz, who was our voting person here in town.
Your clerk, yeah.
And so essentially, is it their job then that's kind of responsible for the integrity of these things?
So no, it's a community responsibility, actually. So it's not just their responsibility, it's also mine as the chief state election official under federal law to make sure that our elections are run with integrity. That's why I've taken a number of steps to actually ensure that.
Yeah.
So, for example, you'll see that at the very beginning of my term, I was able to convince the General Assembly and the governor to appropriate several $1 million for new voting machines that have been used in the 2016 elections and will be used now in the 2018 elections. Why? Because the equipment when I walked in was almost 20 years old. And when you're looking at machinery like that are basically scanners, the company that was doing the maintenance was basically saying, we can't guarantee that these will work anymore. It's 20-year-old equipment. So thankfully, we were able to do that, and so we were one of the very few states in the country that had statewide new voting systems that were really secure, with 4 different layers of encryption and security for our systems.
Okay, now, in fact, let me try to walk us through the process, because I think all of us are familiar in our local polling areas. You know, we're familiar, we get our ballot, we mark it off, we take it over and feed it into the machine, and then what happens? So
then at the end of the evening, the poll workers close the machine, and there's all sorts of very specific instructions about how they have to account for all the ballots, the number
Right,
count that's
on
on
the
the machine and everything. There is an encrypted wireless transmission. When that machine is turned off, which is its signal that the election is over, you can't just turn it back on again. Once it's off, it's off. There's an encrypted transmission to the Board of Elections with unofficial results. At the same time, there is a thumb drive that actually stores everything that's happened, all of the images of all the ballots, so that can be looked at later and verified. There is a paper receipt that comes out with the totals. And finally, we have the ballots inside every one of those machines, which is our final, I think, really good proof. If everything else fails, you have the paper ballots.
Okay, and then what happens to all that data and/or ballots? Where do they go?
So everything goes back to the Board of Elections, where they're stored. Now, in the future, we will have a process called risk limiting audits to verify that the machine counts are secure and they're accurate. And so that will be taking place in the future. That hasn't been a practice that we've had so far. But yes, the ballots are stored for a number of years. There's actually legal restrictions on disposing of the ballots. You have to be doing it in accordance with the law. And so there's a whole set of processes. So when people say, well, are you in charge of the integrity? Yes, I am. But so is the local board of canvassers. So is the poll worker on the ground. We have to me is one of the really neat things about American democracy. As a community, we care for the integrity of the elections.
Yeah, so it's not just one person's in charge. I guess the other thing that's interesting, though, is while we're voting, while that machine is on, it's connected to the internet.
No, it is not.
Okay,
no.
It's not.
No. The only thing that machine is doing at that time during the entire election day is it's scanning images of the ballots and counting them.
Okay.
That's the only thing.
And it does it internally.
Internally. The connection happens wirelessly, and yes, there's a piece that is internet, but it's double encrypted, and we have been looking at the security of that, of course.
Yeah.
And it's for a few, minutes, less than probably in a few minutes. It's that transmission of the unofficial results. That's it. That's the only time.
So to get the official results, all these machines are then taken
and reviewed and accounted for appropriately.
Matched with the paper ballots if necessary.
Yeah, exactly. So that if there's any question, there's a time period after an election. That's why when you go to the Board of Elections website, there's always something that says unofficial results until that election is certified.
Okay.
So there's a whole series of procedures that happen after the fact.
Now, who certifies the results?
The State Board of Elections is the entity that's in charge of certifying results.
Okay. Obviously, security of our voting system is a major issue in the United States right now. How secure? Are you confident pretty well in our system? I think we've got one of the better ones in the country from what I've read.
No, in fact, we were one of only 11 states in the country that was recently given the highest grade possible by the Center for American Progress because of all the measures that I've been taking since getting into office 3 years ago. So, it was just one of the things. The voting machines were a beginning. The fact that we have online voter registration that helps us keep more accurate voting lists because people have easy access to be able to update their voting address. A lot of times people just weren't doing it.
a lot of this stuff is, people don't think about it, but it's all part of the election process.
Absolutely. Now we have automatic voter registration. So when you change your address at the DMV, it will automatically change your voting address as well.
Yeah.
Because why make you jump through another hoop? People don't have time for that kind of thing. Yeah. So we have electronic poll books that are going to be deployed statewide. A number of efficiencies that are all very secure. And then, of course, then there's the people. It's who you have on your staff. And when I came in, we actually bolstered our IT staff by like 40%, just to make sure that we had the right people. So by the time 2016 came around, I had people on my staff that could speak to the Department of Homeland Security. I took advantage of the fact that they were offering secretaries of state the opportunity to help us see if our systems were secure. And so we did that, and they were able to point out a few potential risks that were then immediately addressed. And so what I can say about cybersecurity in elections is this is not something where you go to a certain place and it stops there.
No, right.
And you've achieved
exactly.
it. It is a constant vigilance and mitigation of risk.
Yeah. And, it seems like the hackers and whoever they are around the world are getting smarter and smarter and figuring this stuff out. We've seen that working in the national elections, we think, with some of these foreign groups. So cybersecurity, as you say, is a major concern. Are we funded appropriately? Everything's expensive, particularly to do with computers. I mean,
it is. Although, again, I am very appreciative to the leadership of the General Assembly that they included in their budget 3 years ago the new machines. Because that was a huge leap forward in terms of protecting the integrity. The hiring of the staff that I have in my office, we now have a designated person in my IT department who's a cybersecurity person. And they're in constant communication with the Department of Homeland Security, with our own Rhode Island National Guard, who has expertise in this area.
Yeah.
So we've been able to really work to increase the resources. Is it enough? As you know, things are never enough. But I think we've used our monies very effectively and efficiently. I also know that we will be getting some additional funding from the federal government, about $3 million. And the purpose of that is to better prepare us going into the 2018 election. So we're, thankfully in Rhode Island, we are going to be able to use those monies very effectively.
Yeah, one of the critiques when I was reading about this stuff online was in a lot of states that couple $1 million, which sounds like a lot to me, but it's not a lot in the scheme of things, would only take care of maybe 5% of some of the needs of a lot of states, since we seem to be in pretty good shape anyway. Do you already have a plan for how you're going to use this money?
We're absolutely developing a plan along with our partners over at the Board of Elections to make sure that we deploy that money quickly and effectively and efficiently and really invest in a way that not just takes care of our immediate needs, but looks to the future as well.
Yeah, I think, like you say, it's a moving target, and it'll continue to move. I think when we talk about elections, obviously the integrity of our elections is paramount. But I think there's also a case to be made for getting people who are eligible to vote to be able to vote. Mm-hmm. And what are we doing to make it easier for people to vote?
Yeah, and I'm glad you bring that up, because for all the talk on cybersecurity, I've said on many occasions that Rhode Island is proof that you can protect the integrity of the vote while improving access to the ballot box. So it starts at the very beginning with making sure that people can easily register to vote, that they have access to the forms that they need. You don't, back 30 years ago, you had to go to city and town hall and fill out a paper form. That changed in the 90s, and now we had motor voter. And since then, now we have online voter registration, where you can actually change your address, for example, online. That's what people expect. People don't expect to have to fill out a form
Yeah.
to change their address. And so we're meeting people where their expectations are. We're doing things like, putting a lot of information on our website, vote.ri.gov, that will tell you where you go vote and what your ballot looks like. I tell particularly young people when I go to the high schools, I tell them, elections are not pop quizzes. We give you the questions ahead of time.
That's right.
You can look at them. So I've also done things in an area called Civic by Design. So when a government form, whether it be a voting form, a referenda book, or a business form, is done in legalese, it makes it very hard for people to get motivated to participate.
Non-lawyers, right?
Yes, non-lawyers, yes. So we completely revamped the way the voter information handbook looks and feels, because I've had the experience of reading referenda questions and actually, and I have a master's in public administration. I love this stuff. And going, I don't really know what I'm being asked to do. That's wrong. You're disenfranchising people. You're basically telling them, you know what, you may not be smart enough to vote. No, I want people to be engaged and informed voters. So we put the legal language that we need to, but next to it we say, this is what this question asks you to do. Not how to vote, just explaining you what are your choices, so that people feel like, yes, we want your vote. We make it easier for people to find that information that they need to be informed and engaged voters.
Yeah, you do have a very good website, by the way.
Thank you,
I've
thank
gone
you.
all over it.
Yeah.
A lot of good information.
So that's what I do sort of in an election day time period.
Yeah.
When we bought the new voting machines, we redesigned the layout to make it easier to read. The private sector does this all the time. They do things that are nice looking and easy to read and attractive. There's no reason why a government form or a ballot needs to be hard to figure out.
Right.
So let's do things so that they're easy for people. So that's what I do sort of on the end of the spectrum. But we have to go back to the kids. Because in order to prepare people to be voters, I really believe that you've got to go and engage with children. And so what I've done is we've created a whole series of resources that are available on the website under teacher resources, so that kids can start learning about Rhode Island history and civics, feel a part of this community. Because if you don't feel a part of a community, you're probably not going to go out and vote.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the disconnect. People don't just not vote because they feel it doesn't matter. They don't vote for a number of reasons, including that they're busy. Well, you know what? We've been publicizing the fact that in Rhode Island, there's 3 different ways to vote. So we have, yes, you can vote on election day, but you can also vote by mail. You can get a ballot mailed to your house and fill it out in the comfort of your home and send it back. And in fact, in my budget this year, we've actually put in money so that the postage is already included.
Okay, now do you need a medical excuse or something?
No. Anybody watching this program can simply fill out an application for a mail ballot, and we'll send the ballot over to their house up to 20 days before the election. The time period between 20 days and the day before, then you need to get something called an emergency mail ballot. Again, the law changed why you do that, and you can just go up to city or town hall and say, you know what, I don't really have an emergency, but I can't go that day.
Yeah, right.
I just realized I'm going to be out of town, or you know what, that day's going to be really bad for me, that Tuesday. And then you'll fill out an application form, and then you go through a very intensive paper process, but you get it done, and you can vote 20 days before the election day. I have legislation this year in the General Assembly that would change the name of that time period from emergency mail ballot to early in-person voting, which is really what it is, and would, instead of having to do an application to get the ballot, to then put it into another envelope that then gets taken up to the State Board of Elections to be verified and counted, you would basically have a polling location wherever the city and town designated, at City Hall or a senior center or somewhere, that would be operating as a polling location for those 20 days. And I think what you'll find is that people will find that really helpful. You would show your ID or do your provisional ballot.
Be a lot more convenient for
Very
everybody,
convenient.
basically.
The clerks love it because it gets rid of a lot of unnecessary paperwork. And the law that I'm proposing would give you 4 hours on a Saturday, 4 hours on a Sunday before Election Day. Because some people, look, I live in North Kingstown. I work in Providence.
Yeah.
I don't have time during the middle of my workday to go back to North Kingstown. I usually am the last probably elected official to vote because by the time I have to take care of my kids in the morning. They have to go to school. Then I have to go to work. And then suddenly you do have to do things with the kids. And I usually vote between 7 o'clock and 8 o'clock at night. So why don't we give people that Saturday and Sunday before the election period to be able to do this?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's about making government work for people.
Yeah, what a concept. You know.
That's why I ran.
Now, what do you think the chances are? When do you think that bill is going to go anywhere?
So far we have about 6 communities at this point that have actually passed resolutions. I'm hoping, Portsmouth will do that too.
Okay. Resolution in support?
In support of this.
Okay.
And it's, like I said, it's up for debate right now at the General Assembly. I encourage anybody who thinks this is a good idea, they should contact their state representative
I'll
and
do
state
that.
senator
Yeah.
and let them know that, yes, early in-person voting would be a fantastic thing to have
Yeah.
in the state of Rhode Island.
Well, I think it's great. Anything you can make it easier for
Yes.
people, again, and we're talking about people who are eligible to vote. Getting back to the registration issue, during the last election, last several elections, we've had very low voter turnout. And we sort of see what that leads to. And I guess the key, as you said, were kids. How do we get kids to understand, that this is a civic duty that they have, not just something that they can do or not do?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So it starts early. And it starts with that civics education. I mean, a lot of people don't even realize that if you move from one community to the other, you change what's on your ballot because you change your local form of government.
Sure.
If somebody moves, from Portsmouth to Providence, it's a completely different setup. And so if you don't have these conversations when you're a kid in school, you're not going to find the time usually when you're an adult.
Yeah.
So we start with that piece. Then, as a way to, again, engage young people, I've done things like offer all of our high schools, public, private, independent, parochial, high schools, offer them the ability to have their student government elections on real ballots with real voting machines.
Yeah.
Because
Sure.
the reasons people don't vote sometimes are maybe as similar, maybe as not so much that they don't think it matters. It's I've never done that.
Yeah.
I'm 20-something, and
It's kind of embarrassing if I don't know what
exactly what to do. So
Yeah.
not only are we showing them how to do it, but we're doing it with something that matters to them.
to do. Yeah.
You could ask them, you could have a ballot that says, what are your favorite flavors of ice cream, or what president would you vote for? But that still doesn't connect.
Yeah.
If you have a ballot that shows you your friends, and you know these people's names,
Yeah.
and suddenly that is a different piece of paper, and you put that through that voting machine, and then you see the results, it's a different experience. And so I'm hoping, and we've done it at about a dozen or so high schools, I'm hoping that this will take off.
Yeah. It sounds good. It sounds
Yeah.
like something people should take advantage of. But I think, too, going back to your motor voter
Yes.
idea, the idea that when you get a license, driver's license,
Mm-hmm.
now, is there a separate form to fill out for somebody like a kid?
So we're trying to do it in a way that you minimize the forms and the different steps.
Okay.
So with automatic voter registration, what happens is instead of being asked, "Do you want to register to vote?" you're told, "You will now be registered to vote unless you tell us you don't want to." And I know
Okay.
that seems silly, but
No,
at the time,
absolutely, sure.
you're actually DMV knows whether or not you're a U.S. citizen, what your date of birth is, and what your address is.
Exactly.
So why make you jump through a whole other series of hoops? So we've been working very closely with them
Yeah.
at the DMV, and I have to say they've been fantastic. Bud Craddock and his team has been really, really great.
Yeah.
And in about a month or so, we'll have that. And so that's one less thing for people to worry about when they do this.
Well, I think that's great, because all kids want to get driver's license.
Yes,
And then once they're hooked up,
Yep.
there's nothing else to do. Then they just go down and vote
exactly.
when it becomes time. So I'm hopeful that that'll be the one that really works, because
Yeah.
it seems to me it makes
And in
sense.
Rhode Island, you could pre-register to vote when you're 16 and 17. So at that critical time when kids are getting their driver's license, they will be automatically registered. And then come 18, they get a letter, from the state that says, "Congratulations, you're now eligible to vote."
Yeah, well, that's
And
great.
this is where you go. But there's a lot of tools. Like, so for example, for young people, making sure that our website is being able to be seen on a phone. I was at one of these events that had a lot of young people, and I said, okay, you all have a phone in your pocket. You can look up your polling location, you can look up where you're registered, you can look at your ballot, you can check your family members and neighbors and relatives and friends. I need you to join me in making sure that our information on the voter list is accurate and that people who aren't registered, who are eligible to be registered, do so.
Yeah. I think, too, I feel like one of my missions, and everybody's mission really ought to be to try to get kids out to vote.
Yes.
I don't care who you vote for, but just exercise this right that you have to vote. And maybe we'll see some changes where it really helps. But that's the key thing to me, is getting kids a sense, nobody cares anyway. My vote's not going to make a difference. Baloney.
No, I'm living proof that people's votes matter, because the pundits, the media, didn't think I could win my primary.
Yeah. And
in the end, the most common thing that I got when I won the Democratic primary back in 2014 was, "Wow, Nellie, congratulations! I voted for you. I didn't think you were going to win." And yet they did vote for me. If they had said, "Oh, she doesn't have a chance, I'm not even going to bother voting," then we wouldn't be here having this conversation in particular. And so I can look at people in the eye and say, your vote really does matter.
Yeah, I think that's the key, and I think that's something all adults should be trying to do.
Absolutely.
I know part of your role is maintaining government transparency. And just a quick question, we're almost running out of time, but are you doing anything to improve regulations regarding campaign finances, for example?
So that campaign finance is the purview of the State Board of Elections. I do have a real interest as a candidate and somebody who really believes in open government to make those laws as easy as possible, and to make sure that the website interfaces are easy as well. So I've had a number of conversations with the members of the board. I have to say, I mean, I think we've seen an improvement for sure in the board's functioning and oversight of the campaign finance.
Yeah,
so I think they're on the positive track.
We see it's complicated when there are so many issues that people come up with that they didn't even know they did.
Exactly.
At least they say that. But you guys do great work. I love having you down in this program. I'd like to ask, how can people contact you or your staff? The website, obviously.
Yes. So absolutely. Or you can also find me at Secretary Gorbea at sos.ri.gov. But certainly call me. Come to there's a way to reach me through the website, and most importantly of all, in this particular year, go to vote.ri.gov, and you can find all sorts of information about being a voter, being a candidate. We have a candidate guide information up there right now. Just lots of information for people to learn and use.
Okay, listen, thank you so much for being with us today. And we'll see you all next time on Portsmouth This Week. Just like to let everyone know that the Portsmouth Historical Society is holding their second annual adult trivia contest down at the Valley Inn next week, the 11th of April, from 6:30 to 8:30. The questions will all be about Portsmouth history. So if you think you know something about Portsmouth history, put a team together and come on down there and join us. It's always been a lot of fun. And I hope to see you there. Thank you.